Welcome to SVG-TV News for Thursday, April 19, 2018. I am Rochelle Batiste with the details. Efforts are being made here to ensure that arrowroot farmers receive payment for their produce sold to the Arrowroot Industry Association. That's the assurance from Area Representative for North Windward, Montgomery Daniel, who has been assigned the responsibility for arrowroot. Minister Daniel's assurance comes on the heels of complaints from arrowroot farmers that they are being paid very late for their crop. In an interview with SVG-TV News, the government minister acknowledged that there are marketing difficulties for the starch, which has added to the financial pressure on the Arrowroot Association. But a proposal is now before the cabinet to obtain support from the government for payment of workers and farmers.
The government assisted the industry with approximately $1.3 million. So in the budget, you would have some subvention, but whether or not that subvention may be enough. Most of the time, the subvention in itself is not enough to carry us over, and so we'd have to ask the government for further assistance in carrying us over. So those late payments to farmers would be a cause of that situation. The Ministry of Finance is addressing this matter right at this very moment. The Arrowroot Association, in its program of work for 2018, has provided us with the financial requirements for 2018. This is before the Ministry of Finance, and at our next cabinet meeting, I'm expecting to have some answers coming out of there as to how soon the Arrowroot Association can have a drawdown of the funds they would have asked for from its overall work plan.
Minister Daniel said despite the challenges, farmers are still interested in planting arrowroot due to the attractive returns. He also referred to a recently signed memorandum of understanding between the government, the Arrowroot Industry Association, and Windfresh, formerly WIPDECO, aimed at improving the marketing of the arrowroot starch.
We moved from 100 acres to up to just over 400 acres. And we saw some revival of the arrowroot industry, so that we placed the price of the rhizomes to the farmers by equating it with other root crops. And so the price of arrowroot then went to $1 per pound for the rhizomes. And I can tell you, there has been a great resurgence in the production of arrowroot. And even until now, there has been in that regard. Already we are in discussions. That is, the Ministry of Agriculture and the government are in discussions with the Arrowroot Association and with Windfresh in its MOU, looking forward to working together to bring a new factory to the Arrowroot Association. And I can say to you, once the new factory is established, all of the problems of the marketing will be a thing of the past.
Criminologist and UWI professor Antony Harriet is cautioning about the need to combat revenge killings early. Harriet, who is attached to the University of the West Indies, Mona Institute of Criminal Justice and Security, was speaking on Wednesday at the opening of a two-day national conversation on crime and violence hosted by the SVG Christian Council in collaboration with churches and other stakeholders at the Methodist Church Hall. Professor Harriet says he recognizes the current pattern of crime in this country as being similar to when chronic crime countries such as Jamaica and Trinidad had emergent patterns of crime.
I am very familiar with that pattern. Trinidad, Jamaica exhibited it, right? I am very, very familiar with it. Right? And it's quite a different thing when you move from that second stage into the third stage, or when you permit the third stage to become chronic, to consolidate itself. In that third stage, your culture of peace begins to lose ground to a subculture of violence, right? And it becomes very, very difficult to manage the problem.
Harriet also pointed out that there is a fear among men of being disrespected who believe that they have to defend themselves with violence.
Another feature of it is, I'm sure you're familiar with this, a hypersensitivity to disrespect. So a wide range of behaviors and offenses are interpreted as quote-unquote a diss, and you reply to a diss with violence. That's your chronic third stage. You don't want to get there, right? So you have to craft very careful interventions, because the data is suggesting that you may be inching in that direction.
The UWI professor says that the police must be able to carry out their duties to apprehend and bring criminals to justice before revenge killings escalate.
Have to do with revenge seeking. So, for example, a murder is committed, you allow the police to do their job, and the matter is settled in the courts. That will keep your rate stable and hopefully low. When a murder is committed and a young man takes it upon himself to reply with revenge, you get a different dynamic setting in, because that reply, when you get into that third phase, leads to another reply. They form gangs, right? And it takes on a dynamic of its own, right? And the criminal justice system has great difficulty managing that kind of situation.
Highlighting the importance of love in combating crime, Superintendent Minister of the Methodist Church, Kingston Chateaubriand Circuit, Reverend Adolphe Davis, says this virtue is lacking in many relationships. The Methodist minister, who was speaking on the second day of the National Conversation on Crime and Violence today, says love is an anti-selfish vaccine that must be administered to humanity. Reverend Davis was given a theological perspective to crime and violence, during which he reminded that the first crime was committed by Adam and Eve when they disobeyed God. He says Eve's desire not to be alienated opened the way for her to be enticed by the serpent to eat the forbidden fruit.
Love is a phenomenal principle in defining the quality of relationship. So this not good is tested first by the first crime. So in Genesis we have what I call the first crime and the first violent crime. The first crime, the first breaking of law, Adam and Eve, and the first violent crime, Cain and Abel. Well, Cain killing Abel. Look at the Eve and Adam story. Eve desires progress without Adam. When the serpent in the narrative approaches Eve, he says, "You will be like God, knowing both good and evil." Interesting. And Eve is enticed. It isn't that the serpent says, "You all will be." He is deliberate in isolating Eve, again part of the antisocial dynamic, and saying, "You will progress."
Reverend Davis says respect has to be a recurring theme in fostering peace and working together.
Required respect. Because you see, when they understand mutual necessity, when man understood, human beings understand, I need you, it increases your value tremendously. And my respect for you, therefore, becomes virtually almost automatic. In other words, the more I recognize your importance in my life, is the more I will hold you in high regard. We know this. I try to contain myself with some of the examples, but you know, if you feel you don't need the person, and sometimes we say, they don't put no bread on my table, you feel you have the right to tell them what you want, tell them and do them what you want to do them, because me need them. But when you think you need them, it's amazing how much more careful and respectful and respectable you are.
In other news, economist Shonel Thompson is advising governments to plan properly for development. Thompson, a Vincentian, who is a senior economist at the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, ECCB, was speaking at the University of the West Indies Open Campus lecture held earlier this week on the topic, Flight of the Bumblebee, the turning point for a delicate economy. Thompson said that strategic planning is essential for success.
Development in an economy doesn't come by accident. It's pre-planned. The authorities need to sit and look down the road and determine that this is the way that we want our countries to be shaped. These are the types of people we want to do business with, and this is the way we think we ought to go. When you attempt to leverage innovation in particular to attract that investment, what you have to do is essentially create an ecosystem for that investment to thrive.
Thompson also advised on the need for a legal framework in proper development.
Not simply creating or initiating the platform for investors to work with, but creating that legal framework within which the investor, and I'm assuming it's a company, can thrive. Silicon Valley, for example, doesn't exist outside of the law. It exists within a construct of a legal construct. Once we have this type of legal framework created along with the platforms or the initial entrees into the platform, then we can expect that investment in our region can increase.
The general manager of Sol, Steve Francis, says he is not surprised that the price of cooking gas here has been increased. Francis told SVG-TV News that the price of oil on the international market has registered increases since the last increase in cooking gas was granted in August last year. Francis explained that the price of LPG or cooking gas is linked to the price of oil, so he is not surprised that the gas price hike that took effect on Monday of this week. Francis added that a constant review of LPG prices is necessary to allow consumers to benefit from any price reduction.
It's not surprising to me that the prices would have gone up, given the fact, as I said before, that oil prices would have increased between August and now. So, you know, it's definitely not a surprise. Obviously, it is directly related to the cost of oil, which impacts the cost of the production of LPG. And obviously, once that price goes up, then those who import it would be faced with higher prices to suppliers, which are not passed on to consumers. So I think this is exactly what is happening here. But I think that any price increase is always viewed as a negative thing by consumers. But unfortunately, this is the price that one has to pay for increased costs. On the other hand, if the price of oil were to be reduced tomorrow, or over the next 3 months, I should say, then one should expect a reduction in the price. So that's why it is important that prices be reviewed on a more regular basis. and that there's an adherence to the 3-month period, so that whenever prices are to go down, they should go down.
The Agency for Public Information said Cabinet approved the increase in the price of cooking gas in accordance with the Price and Distribution of Goods Act. The new prices are costing consumers from $2.93 to $34 more for the commodity. President of the Yulo-Pan movement, Onika Morgan, says her organization plays a critical role in preserving the steel pan art form here in SVG. Morgan was speaking with SVG-TV News in relation to the 40th anniversary of the Yulo-Pan movement and the successes it has enjoyed over those 4 decades. She said that the steel pan is considered a part of the nation's identity, and organizations such as the Yulo-Pan movement work to keep the art form relevant for today's generation.
We do not have an organization or have a body that promotes it and keep it alive, and and develop it, and do innovations and so on. Then eventually it would eventually die out, and then if it dies in St. Vincent, it dies in Trinidad, it dies in St. Lucia, Barbados. Eventually the Caribbean would no longer be able to claim the pan. And also it is becoming popular. It's already popular in other countries, America, Europe, and so on. So it is necessary for an organization, all the different bodies in the Caribbean, to keep this instrument alive and relevant to today's young person.
Morgan said the Yulo-Pan movement continues to seek and provide avenues for pan artists to grow and develop their skills, and while there have been some challenges, there also have been some successes.
Even more recent than that, we have signed an MOU last year with the St. Vincent and the Grenadines second generation. It is a UK diaspora group, and we're hoping to see some, rewards from that, even maybe this year or later. But we continue to support all the PAN initiatives of the bands, because the bands themselves are member bands. They have their own programs going on, the training programs, the summer schools, and the various activities within their bands, and also, of course, the major input into PAN and St. Vincent and Grenadines, the PAN Against Crime initiative. We will continue to support that as well.
The PAN movement president also highlighted some of the activities being held in celebration of the organization's 40th anniversary, including an open forum discussion tonight on the future of the organization.
Tonight would be our open forum, and Miss Honorable Renee Baptiste, she will be speaking on and setting the context for the relevance of the steel pan organization in the 21st century, and we would have discussions around that. It starts at 7 p.m. at French's house, and from 7 to 9, and we encourage persons to come out, and band members, even the general public, to come out and make your contribution, so that the idea is to chart the way forward for the next 40 years, and let's see how we can do that critically and strategically.
The St. Vincent and the Grenadines Teachers Union will host a leadership training workshop tomorrow, Friday, April 20th, to help sharpen the leadership skills of its members. The workshop will feature several speakers addressing such issues as discovering yourself, teamwork and team building, negotiation skills, and the basics of parliamentary procedures. The theme is embracing the leader in all of us. It will be held at the National Insurance Services Conference Room commencing at 9 a.m.